The Andalusian mountain areas in southern Spain are known for imposing architecture, mouth-watering tapas dishes, and celebrity chefs on cycles. In 2014, Gordon was called in to visit a brand new restaurant for the very first time. The Granada Divino was opened by architect Milan and his wife and former model, Gina, just 8 weeks earlier. The couple had sunk their £70,000 retirement fund into converting a 4-story building into the business, despite having minimal experience.
I've designed a lot of restaurants in the past. I've never actually owned one.
They had never hired a chef, but didn't let that worry them. When they tasted a great pâté at a Christmas fair, they hired British expat Neil on the spot. While Neil has an impressive resume featuring some highly regarded restaurants back home, he has never managed a restaurant, which the couple are expecting him to do alongside producing the food. The first few weeks have seen very few customers through the door, and the business is running at a £4,000 a month loss. The owners place the blame on their head chef, and the relationship between the three is already deteriorating.
They don't go to you, or they should come.
Well, they don't. But you're not there.
I'm not there. I'm here 13 hours a day.
The financial situation is so bad, they've asked Chef Ramsay for his help. Choosing 4 wheels instead of 2 this time, Gordon has low expectations when he arrives in the pretty Spanish village at the beginning of the summer season. Commenting that the 4-story townhouse looks like a block of flats, Gordon heads inside and up multiple deserted staircases to the roof, where he finally finds Gina and Milan. After welcoming him to the restaurant, they explain that their menu is partially Spanish tapas, but they also serve pizza as people get sick of Spanish food. Chef Ramsay doesn't appear to be convinced. After his long upward hike to the roof terrace, Gordon is relieved to see that they at least have a lift for the food to be served, until Milan tells him it's broken, and they can't find anyone to fix it. A passing server is forced to carry food from the kitchen below up to a raised terrace above, which seats a table of ladies that Gordon is convinced must have been airlifted in. Back on the first rooftop, Gordon hears that Neil worked at highly regarded Scott's in London's Mayfair district, and was head chef at the prestigious Harvey Nichols restaurant. That pedigree should speak for itself, but the owners feel he's too rigid in his ways and needs to remember that it's their business. It's time to sample the food, but Gordon struggles to find any traditional Spanish dishes to try. Instead, he starts with the country pâté that convinced Gina and Milan that Neil was the man for their job. The presentation is poor, and the taste is worse. It's bland and disappointing. Next up is a risotto, but after realizing his rice is overcooked, Neil starts preparing the dish again from scratch, meaning Gordon is left waiting 40 minutes for his second course. And it isn't worth the wait. It's an odd pink color, and the rice is undercooked. The lentil salad arrives covered in too much balsamic vinegar, and the ribeye steak is expensive at €23, and far too fussy. Chef Ramsay goes down to the kitchen to speak to Neil, and the feedback isn't all bad. While food and service were both a letdown, at least the setting was stunning. Gordon tells Neil that his use of balsamic vinegar is decades out of date, and that he needs to move on from his time in London in the 1990s. As Ramsay criticizes his ego, Neil casually plays with a large knife, which he tells Gordon is his friend. Ramsay is starting to worry, and not just about the chef.
You can't be as delusional as the owners. A little bit out there and fucking... a little bit...
Neil's not happy when Gordon calls him delusional, but he puts the knife down. That evening, Gordon invites 50 locals to the restaurant to see how the team deals with pressure. They need to serve that many customers a day for the business to work. It's immediately obvious that Neil has a problem delegating. His 2 sous chefs are left to chop salad instead of helping with entrees. Neil is quickly struggling, and standards start to drop. But Neil still won't let his team help prepare the 30-dish menu. Chef Ramsay finds Gina up on the roof drinking wine while the kitchen is crumbling beneath her. She admits she has never observed a service, because it's Neil's kitchen. Gordon can't understand how Gina can be so detached from her business.
Why didn't you just go and rent a restaurant for a week and play upstairs, downstairs for a week before opening and getting some form of experience?
She's still convinced she can make it work. On the terrace, some diners are left without food while the rest of their group eats, while in the kitchen, Neil has lost track of orders. He leaves perfectly cooked fish sitting for 10 minutes in a pan to go soft and has to microwave a burger to warm it. Upstairs, unhappy customers have already decided they won't be returning. With service over, Gordon tells Neil and the owners that their menu is far too complicated for Neil to prepare single-handedly, and he's completely out of his depth. And though Gina and Milan have built their entire business around the chef, they have no idea what he's up to. Ramsay warns them that their restaurant will be a car crash. At home in their villa, the couple assures Gordon that the Granada Divino isn't just a vanity project. They really want to make money from the business. He tells them that there's no magic wand to make a new restaurant work.
I have lines ingrained in my face for a reason, due to hard work to get successes off the ground.
The couple admits they didn't do any background checks before hiring Neil, so Ramsay does the job himself, calling a couple of friends in the industry. They tell him that Neil wasn't actually head chef at Harvey Nichols or Scott's, and he wasn't able to cope with pressure or criticism. Gordon isn't sure who's stretching the truth. Was Neil overplaying his experience? Or were Milan and Gina trying to boost the restaurant's image? When confronted, Neil tells Chef Ramsay he never claimed to be head chef at either of those places, so the owners are lying. But that doesn't explain the poor dinner service he observed. Neil tells him that the owners just aren't happy with him as a chef.
Neil, I've worked for some fuckers. Right. Psychos. But you can't be beaten by the system.
Gordon tells Neil that he reached a point in his career where he was told to learn to delegate or to get out of the business as he wouldn't survive. He needs Neil to learn the same lesson. Ramsay meets with the chef and owners to clear the air. He tells Milan and Gina that Neil was never head chef in the prestigious London restaurants he worked at, which is greeted by silence. However the confusion arose, they agree to move on. Gordon asks each of them to write down who is causing the problems with the restaurant. They all accept fault for the failure so far, and accept that their communication has held the business back. But Gina defends her meddling with the menu. She tells Gordon that she knows what people like. He points out that her customers don't like the restaurant's food, and she needs to trust her chef's experience. To prove his point, Chef Ramsay puts Gina in the kitchen and asks Milan to run front of house. With only 6 customers for lunch, what could possibly go wrong? Neil is struggling to work with his new commie chef Gina, and Milan is working up a sweat behind the bar. It's been 40 minutes, and the diners haven't had anything to eat. Gordon tells Neil to get Gina moving, but he's unable to speed her up. 2 hours later, Milan is finally able to deliver food to the tables upstairs. And Gina seems to now understand how hard it is for Neil to work with such a small kitchen and long, complicated menu, even just for 6 customers. After numerous trips up and down the main stairs, Milan finally commits to getting the food lift working. But Gordon's efforts to get the owners to support their head chef seem to have gone a little wrong. The couple are now considering letting him go. The next day, Gordon's back to help Neil streamline his menu and get his kitchen under control. His first change is to introduce a special sharing plate of roast chicken with gnocchi, which can serve groups of diners tableside, easing the pressure on the kitchen. He walks Neil through the recipes, which use cheaper, local produce, and absolutely no balsamic vinegar. Gordon is sympathetic to Neil and the years of pressure he's experienced in the industry. He wants him to relax, have some fun, and delegate so he has time to mix with the customers. But a run-through of a guest interaction doesn't go well. He accuses Neil of speaking like a funeral director.
The only thing missing there was the fucking coughing on your shoulders. I know. You all right? Gotta bury this stiff and I'll be back in a minute.
Yet, when he tries to loosen up, Ramsay hates it even more. Gordon takes a turn to show him how it's done, and then ropes in some passers-by for Neil to practice on. He finally seems to get it, and welcomes them, semi-warmly. Chef Ramsay encourages him to work hard and play hard, because after 25 years in the industry, he believes he's earned it. That evening, Neil prepares for service by teaching his sous chefs to prepare the dishes. And with manager Emily pushing the sharing plates like a pro, orders for the roast chicken start flooding in. The team works together beautifully and serves 40 customers in 2 hours. Gordon sends Neil upstairs with one of the final plates to interact with the customers, which he does with newfound confidence. Over 50% of the orders that evening were for sharing plates, which saved time in the kitchen and halved the number of trips up the stairs for the servers. The team has proved it can work together effectively, and the restaurant made £700 in one night. The next morning, Gordon wants to strip back the rest of the menu. He has come up with an example menu containing 4 starters, 4 entrees, and a couple of desserts, and encourages Neil to make the dishes his own by cooking from the heart. Neil gets to work, determined to prove that he's head chef material. While he's busy in the kitchen, Ramsay takes Milan and Gina down to the coast to hand out food samples, hoping it will encourage new customers to visit La Granada Divino. While they're great at chatting, they're not great at staying on topic, and need to be reminded to keep talking about the restaurant. Back in the village, Neil's ready to share his new menu with his bosses. First impressions are good, with the food looking fresh, colorful, and appetizing. Ramsay is impressed with the flair that Neil has added to the local ingredients he'd been given. And there's another pleasant surprise. The food lift has finally been fixed. That's great news for server Emily, who has impressed Gordon so much he announces she should be promoted to restaurant manager. Milan and Gina admit they previously had doubts about Neil, but they now have faith in him as their head chef. Gordon is convinced that if they all work together, the restaurant will succeed. It's relaunch evening, and Chef Ramsay has invited a local food critic to sample the new menu. Before they get started, the team gathers to check out the new menu, and Gordon has a gift for Neil.
I always have a spare jacket, and I think I'd like to give you this to wear for service tonight and to keep order. I want you looking like a chef.
The restaurant is fully booked, with 60 customers for dinner. Groups start to arrive, and orders hit the kitchen. Food is quickly sent out, and the sharing plates are a hit with the diners, and the pressurized kitchen team. The food critic arrives, but remains anonymous, so they must treat every diner like royalty. An hour into service, the sharing plates sell out. Emily is pushing the individual dishes, but the pressure is building on Neil, who falls silent. Dishes are leaving the kitchen without being checked, and key elements are being missed. Gordon tells Neil he needs to take back control of his team. He snaps out of it and starts overseeing the sous chefs once again. Food starts leaving the kitchen, and the service is back on track. Even Milan is impressed, and so is the food critic, who thinks the food is reasonably priced and delicious, making La Granada Divino the best restaurant in the area. They've taken €1,800 in one night, but Neil is still apologetic because the service wasn't completely smooth. Gordon tells him he needs to be less self-critical moving forward because things will never be completely smooth. Ramsay feels that Neil has all the makings of a great head chef if he works closely with his team. Following Gordon's visit, the restaurant was making £5,000 a week, and the owners had stepped back, leaving the running of the business in Neil and Emily's capable hands. The La Granada Divino episode of Costa Nightmares was filmed in June 2014 as part of Gordon's 2-month tour of Spanish restaurants. When he left, the restaurant had a good summer season, as it continued to make money and its reputation improved. And that's partly thanks to the anonymous food critic from the local newspaper, who was impressed on relaunch night. But to be completely fair, the critic returned a few weeks later to sample the food under more normal circumstances. Once again, he was impressed with Neil's food, which was still freshly prepared using local ingredients, with delicious results. Over the summer, Neil was still serving the dishes Chef Ramsay had suggested, but he changed the menu in September. When the show aired in October 2014, the restaurant's Facebook page happily advertised their upcoming 15 Minutes of Fame. It created renewed media interest, but mainly in Gordon's hair, rather than La Granada Divino's transformation. That's because Gordon was pictured a month before filming sporting an unusual hairstyle at Victoria Beckham's birthday party. Eagle-eyed fans suggested the severe undercut suggested he's had hair harvested. It wasn't the first time. In 2011, he was spotted leaving a hair transplant center wearing strange head coverings. But a month after the combed-down party look, Gordon's signature quiff was back to normal, which was apparently big news. At the end of October, Neil celebrated Halloween by dressing as the scariest ghost of kitchens past, Chef Ramsay himself. During this time, the restaurant only received one Yelp review, which was 4 stars, mainly based on Chef Ramsay's roast chicken. Though, as viewers pointed out, the Italian gnocchi wasn't an obvious addition to an authentic Spanish menu. A month later, after a well-earned holiday, Neil once again revamped the menu and added new specials. They were obviously still trying to attract new customers, as the team branched out to host curry nights, along with selling festive pies at the local Christmas fair, where the owners had first met their head chef. It's hard to tell what happened next. Neil was still working at the restaurant during the Christmas period, and had changed the menu to appeal to expats, serving traditional British Sunday roasts by January 2015. But soon after that, Neil was gone from the Granada Divino, though we don't know the circumstances of his leaving. The owners announced the change on Twitter in April 2015 by introducing their new head chef and his new menu. By the time the summer season began in 2015, a year after Gordon's visit, Milan and Gina were relying on him again, or at least his name, as they advertised their Ramsay-inspired tapas. But that wasn't good enough to keep the restaurant open. In October 2015, the Granada Divino closed its doors for good. The owners announced the closure on their website, with a compilation of reviews, customer photos, and a picture of Gordon. Their statement celebrated their excellent TripAdvisor rating, talented chefs, and exciting TV debut. Milan and Gina revealed that they were retiring from the restaurant industry after just 18 months. When interviewed, the couple was clear that their appearance on the show had nothing to do with the closure, and that instead there were a number of contributing factors, including high summer rents in the area. To try to recoup some of their £70,000 investment, the couple were selling the entire contents, down to the light fittings. The building remained empty after they left, though Google Street View shows another restaurant took its place at some point. Following their retirement, Milan and Gina continued to live in the area, but spent a lot of time traveling. Milan is a talented artist who used the quiet 2020 season to produce numerous paintings of the Spanish countryside. Gina enjoys walking and exploring the local area, and spending time with friends and family. In February 2024, the couple finally moved from their home in Spain and relocated back to Oxfordshire, England. But if you'd like to experience their elegant Spanish lifestyle, their villa is advertised online on a number of rental sites. As for head chef Neil, he had mixed feelings about his experience with Chef Ramsay on Costa del Nightmares. Neil found the whole process grueling. He spent 4 weeks with a producer watching him in the kitchen before his 7 days with Gordon. But when asked whether Gordon was difficult, he admitted that the celebrity chef was okay, and didn't come down too hard on him. The only criticism he really received was about lying on his resume, and he assured Gordon that he hadn't done that. On his current resume, he lists his jobs at Scott's and Harvey Nichols as chef de partie and senior chef de partie, not head chef. Though he does claim to have held that position at several Spanish restaurants before the Granada Divino. In fact, his time there doesn't appear on his resume at all. Instead, he states that he has been working as a personal chef for private clients since August 2012. It appears he has been working as a chef on private yachts during that time. Unfortunately, we don't have any further updates on Neil, and we couldn't track down restaurant manager Emily. We wish everyone involved in the episode, including Gordon's hair, the best of luck in the future.